It's the Progress Pod, a production of the Franklin County Coalition for Progress. I'm Jeremy Cade, going solo today. Pete should be back for our next show. Here in South Central Pennsylvania, we're surrounded by bountiful country with acre upon acre of apples, peaches, cherries, apricots, and more. Produce production is hard work, requiring dedicated and dependable workers. Perhaps just as important as the weather is to a successful harvest is reliable labor. In the United States, that has come to be migrant workers from Mexico and Central America. For decades, these workers have come to harvest the produce that ends up on our grocery store shelves, returning home to their families when the work is done. In recent years, however, it's not quite so simple. Work visa restrictions, along with the challenges and dangers of crossing the southern border, have caused many workers to either return home and not come back or take up permanent residence in the United States, in many cases separated from their families and living in the shadows, so to speak. In Franklin, Adams, and Cumberland Counties, the group Fruitbelt Farmworker Christian Ministry has taken up the cause of reaching out to these workers as supporters and advocates. On today's show, we're going to meet Rod Runyan, Director of FFCM, who will be presenting at the Coil Free Library in downtown Chambersburg on Monday, February 25th at 6 p.m. Thanks for being on the podcast, Rod.
You're welcome.
So tell us more about the Fruitbelt Farmworkers Christian Ministry and what led you to be a part of the group.
Okay, originally it was founded here in Franklin County, in Chambersburg, by Reverend Ray Kaufman. He and several other people noticed that Cumberland, Franklin, and Adams County, all three had large migrant populations coming in for the harvest, as you'd said. And these people would go out and visit in some of the migrant camps. But what they found was churches were going to visit in the camps, but there were 2 or 3 or 4 churches could show up at the same day in the same camp. And it was just like a duplication of efforts that didn't need to be done. So they got together and formed a coalition that founded Fruitbelt as kind of a overseer of churches, trying to help churches to meet the needs of the workers, but without overwhelming them with a bunch of people showing up at once. So we try to encourage churches to contact us when they want to go visit. And we have what we call our Friend to Camp program that tries to coordinate churches visiting in the migrant camps.
Okay.
That's just one of our programs, but that has evolved over the years, and the whole ministry has evolved over the years. It was founded in 1989. I joined in 1990 when my wife and I returned. Well, we'd been in South America 2 years. We were about 9 months in Southern California, and in the fall of 1990, we became chaplains and translators with Fruitbelt Farmworker Christian Ministry.
Okay.
After that, I pastored a Spanish church in Gettysburg for 7 years, from 93 to 2000. We worked as translators for the Migrant Health Department at their clinic in Gettysburg, and we worked for Gettysburg Hospital as translators for several years, while we continued working with Fruitbelt, because at that time, most of the work that we did was in the fall during the picking season. From about the middle of August until the end of October, basically. That's the basic season.
So it has come to be a year-round
pretty much, because
undertaking.
There are workers that stay here doing pruning and, other things that need to be done. I don't know if you've ever done any farm work, but it doesn't matter the time of the year, whether it's time to plant or what. There's always work to be done.
Right.
So there are workers that are here year-round.
Okay.
Plus, we have a number of packing houses in the 3 counties that they put fruit in cold storage and then pack it and ship it all year round. So there are workers, foreign workers here for that also.
Okay. How do you think we got to where we are today, where we rely so heavily on migrant farm workers?
Actually, that started back after the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, families basically picked their own. There weren't any big orchards like we have now. The families
they really were family farms.
Yeah, and they would have friends and people they knew come out and help pick.
Yeah.
After the Second World War, the men that came back didn't want to work in the orchards anymore. Well, some did, but the majority didn't. And that's when the true migrant workers began, and they were usually African American coming out of Florida or South, the U.S. South. That lasted, I don't know, I'd say sometime in the 60s, and that's when Hispanic, primarily Mexican work. No, before that was Puerto Rican workers, because they could get here without any restrictions. They're U.S. citizens.
Right.
But then they too, as economy changed, they got better jobs and were no longer felt they needed to do that kind of work. And that's when Mexicans started to come in and assume those jobs. And that's been the majority of the workers here since sometime in the mid to late 70s and into the 80s. It's been primarily Mexican workers. Now it's starting to switch. There's a lot more workers from other countries in Latin America here. And not too many. I've seen a few from Eastern European countries, but very few, and they usually don't stay working very long. They may work 1 or 2 seasons, but then they go to something else. Okay. And the workers who came during that time, well, frankly, I don't know how to say it. Most of them were undocumented.
Yeah.
Borders were a lot more porous.
Right.
And in spite of the rhetoric about how bad migrant, and another thing I should say, the politically correct term has changed over the last couple of years. It's now migratory workers, because the term migrant, the way it's been used, has taken on a bad connotation.
Okay.
But the workers, the majority are here to make money,
right,
to send home to families, because they don't have the availability for that work.
Right.
Matter of fact, back a few years ago, before the wall discussion all came up, there was talk about building a fence. And I talked to a number of workers back then that said, hey, if they would let me go home every year and come back, I'll build a fence and not charge.
Right.
So they were willing. The thing is, we never had really a guest worker program like they have in other countries.
Right.
That's something President Bush had suggested and never got to see through.
Yeah.
There's something like that now called the H-2A program.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I've read that it's not exactly effective.
Well, a lot of workers or growers are going to it now.
Okay.
Primarily, especially since the raids that have been happening over the last 3-4 years, the immigration raids. And that's in that program, growers have to request permission from Department of Labor to hire workers from another country. And then they contact a contractor in that other country who actually finds the workers. The grower will then pay for their visas and whatever paperwork they have, pay transportation here and back. And they're contracted for a specific amount of time. 9 months is the maximum.
Okay. So that system works for these farmers?
Well, it does. Problem is, it's expensive. My last understanding is it's $1,000 or more per worker for the grower to get somebody here, and that number may be wrong. That's.
Yeah. Okay. I had read that there were issues with scheduling, like they can't necessarily get the workers here when they need them the most if they go through this program.
Well, sometimes it depends on how early they go and they apply, and so it can be an issue. Yeah. But it's better than having a crew working and immigration come in and arrest them all.
Rule. Yeah.
So then you're stuck with nobody.
Right.
And the workers would still rather be able to go back home and return here year after year. Well,
and that's, like what I was saying is that a lot of them have chosen not to return home because it is so difficult to get back. Yeah. So now they're separated from their families. And
I know guys have been here 15, 16, 17 years without having been home to see their families. Yeah. I knew one guy that left Mexico the day his wife had their first child and didn't see that child till she was 18.
Wow.
And there are other workers I got a lot of similar stories.
Yeah, I bet.
I could tell. But so the workers would rather have some type of program themselves.
Of course.
But
sure.
but they need to get here. They want to work.
Right.
When you make as much a day as they can picking apples as they would make in a month in Mexico, then that's incentive for them to come.
Yep.
And right or wrong, and we've never accepted government money or grants or anything, because we want to work with the people, whether they're legal or illegal, and to us it doesn't really matter. They're human. They're people.
Right.
So we want to show them the love of Christ, the love of Jesus, to see that we care. And we've in the past we've had some lawyers helping work with us that helped with immigration issues, and we've taken people different places to Philadelphia to fill out paperwork and all that kind of stuff. But the workers would rather have a cards to come.
Yeah.
To be able to come back and forth.
Yeah. It seems the American system has made it so this is what people rely on. It's just this. Yeah.
And the growers up until H2A came in really didn't have any other effective way to hire. And even people would say, and they still say that, well, the grower needs to check their cards and all that. But when I first year we planted our church in Gettysburg in 1993, we had 5 guys. I got a call from a grocery store owner, Mexican store owner in Artsville in Adams County, who said, hey, I've got 5 guys from Michoacan in Mexico here that have been here about a week, and I can't afford to feed them any longer. Can you help them find work? They had come from Mexico. They were all related from the same town, back in the boonies in Michoacan, which is a state that borders Guatemala. And somebody had come to their village, said for a certain amount of money, I will take however many of you people can find the money and to the United States and get you work and give you all your papers. Okay? These people couldn't read and write.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit, but not really well. And the whole village got together and got enough money for these 5 guys to come to the United States. They didn't come across the Mexican border. They came on a boat into Florida. And he, true to his word, the guy got them jobs picking oranges and stuff down in Florida. When that season was over, somebody said, hey, up in Pennsylvania, they pick apples now. Because these guys didn't know what they were going to do. So a guy showed up in a van, and other people were getting in his van to go, and they asked, well, how much could you help us find work up in Pennsylvania? And he said, sure, come on, come in. So he had 25 people in a 15-passenger van, charged $450 a head to drive them to Pennsylvania and help them find jobs. So some of the guys already knew where they were going. They had jobs. They'd worked for growers before. So he got up here, and these were the last 5 guys in the van. They wanted to stay together. Guy took them to the store, said, well, go on and get a little something to eat or drink, and I'm going to a grower down the road here, and I'll ask if see, I'll get you jobs down there. When he came back a little later, said, he pulled up in front of the store, rolled down his window, said, sorry, he doesn't need anybody, and he drove away.
It just takes off.
I knew the grocery owner. We were friendly. We weren't necessarily good friends, but we knew each other. Like I said, we were planning a church. We had rented a facility. Well, it was a 1-bedroom apartment that we were using for the church. And I told them, you can stay here, and we'll see what we can do to help you find work. So they stayed in that 1-bedroom apartment, and they all slept in the bedroom. Yeah. They didn't want it, the whole apartment. But we took them, finally helped them to find work. But I almost got arrested because I didn't have a contractor's license. So it was a federal thing. But as I was helping them fill out paperwork to get their jobs, I looked, going over their papers, and they all had green cards. They had Social Security cards and all that. And oldest guy was 42. Youngest guy was 19. They all had the same birthday. They didn't know. Like I said, they couldn't read.
Right.
And so that's not as bad as it used to be, but it was still,
Yeah.
that was a fairly common thing. I was a Marine recruiter back in the mid-'70s. I started with all volunteer, first came in. But I was assigned to a place in Central California where there were a lot of migrants. The guy that I replaced was Mexican, second generation, or first generation. His parents had moved here from Mexico,
Okay.
but he still spoke Spanish. And he told me where to send people to buy green cards so that I could enlist them in the Marine Corps. I never did that. But you know, it was not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
I knew several places, and I don't know any longer in Franklin and Adams counties where people could go and buy their green cards.
Yeah.
But they still are available, and
Yeah.
they'll have, many of them will have green cards.
Okay.
But or most of them will.
Yeah.
Growers won't hire anyone without a green card, but there's no way for them to check to see if it's valid or not.
Right. Yeah. Well, can you touch on a day in the life of these workers when the harvest is in full swing, and you're going to visit them at their camps?
I'll try. Generally, and I'll talk primarily apple season because that's the busiest.
Mm-hmm.
Guys will get up before the sun comes up, like most farmers.
Yeah.
They'll eat breakfast and go out to the orchards and begin picking. And they'll generally work from can see to can't see.
Yeah.
Till they can't see any longer.
Right.
And again, depending on the grower, they all get a lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
Some growers allow a little longer, and the guys go back to their, to where they're living to eat. Most of the workers take lunches with them and eat, sitting there in the orchards.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different kinds of trees now. It used to be the trees were a lot taller than they are now, and workers would be climbing up and down ladders and using what they call costals. It's like a bag bucket combination that they load the apples in. Get almost a bushel of apples in each one. They would climb the ladder, load it up, come back down and empty it into a bin.
Uh-huh.
Bins, well, there's two types now because of different production requirements of different plants. There's wooden bins that are generally 25 bushels and plastic ones that are generally 23 bushels.
Mm-hmm.
And the workers get a piecework rate during that. They call it they're working by contract. They get piecework rate, usually paid by the bin,
okay,
depending on the size of the bin. Some growers break it down into bushels. How many bushels they pick, but the majority it's by the bin. Worker can make say $150 or so a day. It varies. If it's raining, usually the growers won't allow them to work because of possibility of falling off ladders.
Mm-hmm.
But that's changing somewhat. I don't know how many of your listeners may have visited through the orchards, and they now can see trees that are staked up like tomato plants.
Yeah.
And those are a dwarf tree
Okay.
that won't grow very tall and usually can be picked without ladders.
Is that the purpose of growing them
That's the purpose of growing like that. It doesn't take, it's not as labor intensive,
Mm-hmm.
but they can plant them closer together. So there's roughly the same amount of apples as there are with the bigger trees, the taller trees.
Yeah.
But it takes less workers because they don't have to climb and move the ladders.
Okay.
But the guys are out and they're back home. Usually say, during the height of the picking season, before daylight savings time changes,
Mm-hmm.
I usually don't leave home from Carlisle until about 5 or 5:30 because the guys won't be back for me to visit in the labor camps
Mm-hmm.
or the grower-owned housing, whichever way you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
until about 6.
Okay. And so what are you doing when you go visit the camps?
To talk to people,
Uh-huh.
find out if they have any needs, anything we can help with.
Yeah.
We take people, our ministry, we have volunteers who will drive people to doctors and dentist appointments and different kinds of things, find out if there's any of that coming up.
And you have different churches that will come in and serve meals and
Well, that's
things like
part
that?
of the Friend of Camp program.
Oh, okay.
That we do that. The guys generally cook for themselves.
Okay.
We also offer sweatshirts and blankets that, the guys that have never been here before don't realize, well, to them it's cold, but they don't realize how cold it'll be to them, so they don't have the clothing they necessarily need.
Yeah, I guess, they're working in the fall, and you never know what it's going to be.
It's getting cooler and cooler. So we offer the sweatshirts and blankets, and all those items are donated to us by churches.
Okay.
We had a board meeting last evening, and one of my responsibilities I've got to go through now and figure out how much in-kind donations we get like that, sweatshirts and blankets, and we have something we call a health kit, which was originally like a salesman's foot in the door.
Okay. Yeah.
When we first started, people didn't know who we were.
Right.
I see these Americans come pound on the door, and they wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the first time I went into a camp, I didn't realize it, but I wore a hat that was the same as the Border Patrol hats.
Uh-huh.
And I heard doors slamming and people going out, saw people going out windows, and they thought I was immigration. But the health kits are to say, hey, originally we've got a gift for you. We're not here to get anything. These are presents from churches.
Right.
And we still offer those every year. They have a towel, soap, washcloth, shaving stuff, toothpaste, toothbrush, and they might not have themselves yet. If they just got here, they haven't been able to go purchase those things because they don't bring much with them when they travel up.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of the same guys year after year, or how does it change?
It used to be a lot of the same guys, and they were traveling from the same areas. There used to be a route up the East Coast and coming up through the Midwest from Texas, and even across the country from California. There were 3 basic.
With work all the way.
Work all the way. And every 2.5 months, they would be changing jobs and moving a little farther.
Okay.
And the work is still basically the same, but things have gotten mixed up for a lot of different reasons. And, there still are, the East Coast stream is still pretty much there, but the others are we still get a few, but they're not as solid as they used to be.
Yeah. I wonder about your interactions with the farmers. What are their thoughts on the migrant labor that they depend so heavily on? What do they say needs to happen to make this a workable, legal system? What's the best thing that could happen for them?
Well, a program that would guarantee them work are similar to the H-2A program, but maybe not so expensive.
Yeah. Because you think they're the ones that know best what needs to be done, but they're also reluctant to speak, I guess, because
there are a few that aren't.
Okay, that's good.
The Hollabaugh brothers in Mendersville that's a fairly large orchard. Brad, I don't remember how old he is now, but about my age, so he's late 60s, early 70s now, but he has been he's visited Congress, testified before Congress, and is writing information all the time about suggestions from growers and that he sends to different places.
It has to be so frustrating. It seems we've taken leaps backward in the last couple of years instead of going the direction we need to be going. How can people, if people want to help your organization, how can they reach out to you?
Well, one of the first things they can do is give us money.
Yeah.
We're a faith-based mission, which means that if we don't have money, we don't exist.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been working as faith-based missionaries since 1986. So sometimes things have been pretty tight. Sometimes they've been pretty good. But that's one of the things we need is money. Another thing is our friendly camp program. We have 100 plus camps in the counties we work in. But last year, I think we only had 8 churches visiting any of the camps. And it's amazing how much friendship can be built up and how much understanding can come out of those visits.
Yeah, given the amount of churches we have in this area, I think we should have more than 8 on board.
Yeah, we should. that means we would have to get more money to put on more staff. Because right now it's just my wife and I as the only permanent staff on it. Now we have volunteer translators and chaplains that work with us in the fall. We have our board, which is all volunteers. Some of them have been with Fruitbelt since the beginning also, since 1989. And some are new. But we have a lot of different people and have had over the years as board members who are still looking. If somebody would like to come alongside and become a board member, we're always looking for board members. Right now we have 8, and we're set up in our bylaws to have 12.
Okay.
And it would be nice to be able to spread some of the things we do among that.
Yeah. Well, your website is fruitbelt-farmworker.org. So if anybody out there listening is willing to get involved, they can
contact us.
Yeah.
We're always looking for volunteers to help out with different things. And
you guys do important work. I mean, I was looking over your website and some articles that have been written on your organization, and you guys really are kind of like a family for these people for the time that they're here. So, and that's important. Another thing, I was looking at your website. You had an essay on there that I thought was great, Welcoming the Stranger essay by Allie McGraw. You told me you had written that, and I would encourage anyone listening to go to your website and find that essay and read that over.
Yeah, and Allie is actually grew up in the orchard. She's known workers from when she was little.
Yeah, tells that story. Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate the work that you do, and I'm glad that you were able to make it into town here to talk with us on the podcast. And we'll look forward to hearing you at the library, Coil Free Library, on Monday at 6 o'clock. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you can find the Progress Pod online at progresspod.org and send us an email to progresspod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.